Good day. I'm Amy J. from the US, here with your podcast news.
And I'm Ant McGinley in the UK, where it's a little bit chilly today. Our big story today is about the fact that Amazon, Apple, and Spotify through Anchor are making it easier than ever to get your podcast featured on their platforms. Yes, they're finally bringing clarity and democracy to what, until recently, has been something of a mystic art. Now, you may have logged into each of these podcast apps and thought to yourself, how can I get my little show featured on the front page on New and Noteworthy in this particular section? Well, there was three ways until now. First of all, you were lucky enough to know somebody at Apple or Spotify who liked your show. Or secondly, perhaps you were a production company with an existing relationship. The third way is the one that's most known, and that was some kind of voodoo woo-woo way of incantations and rumors and myths and a combination of reviews and votes. All that is gone now because all three of these platforms have launched forms for you to submit, very simple, very clear, to get promotion for your podcast to be featured. Now, there's no guarantee that this will happen, but it opens the floor. It gives us a level playing field for so many shows out there. And some of them are doing it as a time sensitive. So rather than being just feature my podcast at any time, they're saying, at which time would you like your podcast to be featured and why? Now, they all have certain standards. And I think this is part of a move that will improve the standards of all podcasts, because people will suddenly go, okay, they rejected it because the sound quality wasn't good enough, so I'm going to work on that, or for whatever particular reason. But the really exciting thing about this is that in the same way that when you log in to any of these apps and you see the really big shows being featured, you could see your artwork and your show being featured there as well. And the impact of that can be huge. Now, over the years, both myself and Amy have been fortunate enough to have our work featured, more when it was something of a mystic art. With my old soccer show on the left side, we were featured a number of times on New and Noteworthy. Even when we were no longer new, but I would still maintain that we were noteworthy. And it did give us a huge boost. And at one stage, saw us pushing up to the top 10 of all sports podcasts, which was very exciting at the time. More recently, the wrestling show that I work on, Wrestling with the Champ, over Christmas, we were featured on another platform called Castbox. And just being featured for a week long over Christmas, we had a 10-fold increase on our audience for that episode. And that had a knock-on effect with people going back and subscribing to the show and also listening to other episodes. So this is a huge boost to you, especially if you are trying to build your audience and generate more revenue. This is very exciting. Now, bear in mind, Castbox are third or fourth when it comes to podcast platforms. If you were to get featured on something like Spotify through Anchor or an Apple, they hold much more of the audience. We're looking at almost 30 million people per month using Apple and the similar number using Spotify. So that could give a huge... It's basically getting your show in front of more ears for that period that it's featured.
I think people often forget, because we tell you, don't focus on the numbers and stuff. But when you're podcasting, oftentimes the one way of promotion for you is social media. And so with social media, you guys just post it on Instagram and hope people will listen. This feature thing is even bigger than that, because oftentimes the first thing you see when you go to a podcast app is the features. It's the first thing in your face. And like Ant mentioned, I have been lucky enough to be featured on the infamous and mysterious New and Noteworthy, which had the woo-woo formulas of it's the 8-week period, not a day before, not a day after, and all that. And nobody knew, right? It was like hit or miss on whether you could do it. And we've had friends in our circles who have been lucky enough to be featured and worthwhile. They deserved every bit of the recognition on these platforms. One of them is our good friend Stephen Hart, and his Trailblazers FM podcast, which was featured twice, I believe, in Black History Month in different years, and amazing. And he will tell you it's blown up how people see and find his podcast. And so it's been a mystery, though. Like Ann said, there are 3 different ways, but you now have a written down, proven way that we are going to share with you guys today, which I think is incredible because this has not been heard of before.
And just to pick up on what you said about social media, the great thing about this is you're reaching so many more people that are outside your bubble. No matter what your sphere of influence is, no matter how small or how big, you're going to be exposed to a bigger audience. Whether they scroll through and connect on it or not, it is another matter. But you're just getting in front of them in terms of the options that they've got. And that is... I mean, I can't even think of what the dollar amount would be if you had to pay for that kind of advertising. This is a huge billboard in front of people that want to listen to podcasts. And a lot of the time, our audience that we've got, not all of our audience are podcast listeners, that we share it to. So this is a wonderful opportunity.
And I think that we have to give 2 cautions to people, right? One, this is probably territorial. I can't say that for sure, but I believe... Like if you're being featured, you're going to probably be featured in the US podcast space. You might not be seen in India or the UK. So keep that in mind, right? It'll probably be wherever your country or territory is.
I mean, I can handle it if it's a few less million than the other options. So let's look at how we actually do this. So we're going to focus on 3, and I'm sure the other platforms will follow this. So we've got Apple, we've got Spotify using Anchor, and we've also got Amazon. So the Apple form, and we'll put the links in the notes, it's the Apple Podcast Promotion Request. And this is a time-sensitive one as well. So they're asking you to submit it at least 2 weeks ahead of the lead time. So this is a really good way. So say, for example, you've got a great guest on your show, or you've done a really great interview and you want to give it maximum promotion, or perhaps it's tying in with an event that you've done. So, for example, I'm about to take my wrestling podcast to the Leicester Comedy Festival, which is in February in the UK here. And so we've put in a couple of these submission promotion requests built around that time. So the idea is that in a perfect world, just before our show at the comedy festival, we get featured. Perhaps we're in with a shot now. We've bought the lottery ticket, if you will, which didn't cost us anything. We've bought that, so we're in with a shot of that extra promotion. And very simple, on the Apple one, you've just got to say your desired promotion date, ideally when you'd want to. We still don't know how this is going to form, whether you'll be on for 1 day or 1 week. We don't know. You put on the channel the link to it on Apple Podcasts to make it easier to find them. Describe what the show is about, and then let people know when your first episode was out, all these kinds of things. So it's a little bit of admin. It's a form not unlike anything that you've seen. And they ask you a couple of questions about your social media accounts, your marketing plan, and a link to featured artwork, which again is where it's important that your artwork meets the criteria. And that's pretty much the form. You fill all that in and you hit submit, and then, well, you sit and wait. There's no guarantee.
And guys, I want to highlight what Ant was saying. This says at least 2 weeks of lead time, right? Give them time, because there's probably going to be back and forth. You agreed to work with them on the promotion and what you're doing. So keep that in mind as you're doing it. So the second one is that we're going to look at is the Spotify feature pitch form. It's very similar to what Apple's was. Wants you to put your name, right? They want to give you the show category, your email address so that they can contact you. What kind of feature are you looking for? Is this a new show? Is this a new season of an existing show? Is it a new episode? Get specific. The key here, guys, is plan ahead before you start putting it in. Don't just put in your first thought. Really sit down and take some time to think about what can this feature do for you and how can you help Spotify with what they're doing, because tell us why this episode it should be featured. Is it special? Is it a topic? And keep in mind at the very, very top, the one thing they say is we look for shows of a certain quality and try to make sure we are showcasing a diverse array of podcasts.
Yeah, and what's interesting there, the difference between that and the Apple one is your upcoming episode, season, or series. So they're giving you more options for being featured. I think also it's going to come up. We'll look at the Amazon one next now, and the thing with this is with those lead times. It means if you really think ahead and you plan your episodes out. So say, for example, it's Pride coming up. And so we want to do a feature on this or a special episode about that, or perhaps there's a national day that's happening that you want to make it a part of. As we said, these will probably be territorial, like a lot of the front pages are on these platforms. So if you can tie it in with that, it's likely that might fit in with their agenda because they go, it's National Dog Owner Day. And so if you've got a dog podcast or a special episode about dog training, perhaps that might feature in a little section that they put up on that day or that week or whatever. So we're still guessing a little bit, but at least we have a clear path on where to go. Now, the difference with the Amazon one, this is for
real quick, before you go to the Amazon one, I do want to note that there is a difference between Apple and Spotify. Spotify does ask for a preview of your audio. So they want to see what is your episode about. So don't think that you can get featured and then record. Have that episode recorded so that you can show them, this is what we're doing. This is the conversation we're having. That could make or break their decision, right? Keep that in mind.
Yeah. And this makes perfect sense because you may be scheduling the show to be released on a particular day, but they want to make sure they hear it before they are promoting it for you. So I don't know if that's necessarily going to have to be the finished article, but if you can give a section of the show for them to listen to, like a demo of what's going to be involved, then that will help them make their decision. So Amazon Music is, again, promoting. Now, I think with the difference with this one, this is purely at the moment going to be on their podcast promotion page on Instagram. Play More Pods, at Play More Pods. That's the Amazon Music podcast page. Now, they've got a relatively small following on there, but the really great thing about this is that means there's potentially less people pitching for this at this moment, which is increasing your chances. And even if they have a smaller audience than the others, you can still then use from this point on and share on your media as featured by Amazon Music, which is a great boost to your other marketing activities. And very similar format on the form as you go through it, adding your art, your image, when you want to look to what's doing this, and a little bit of room for you to talk about why you want this particular thing to be promoted. Now, I think all of this is coming together. It comes back to stuff that we've said before, Amy, in that so much of podcasting now is after production. So you've produced the episode and then it's the marketing. What this does is it gives you a really clear structure for what you're doing and what you're marketing. And as far as I'm aware, at the moment, there's no limit on how many times you can submit any of these and you can put these in. I mean, it may annoy the people at the other end that are having to read these emails, but...
Well, that's actually a good point you make, right? Because if you flood them, your first impressions last, right? So if you're flooding them with more and more episodes, one for each one you do, I think that was gonna affect how they view submissions that you bring. So keep that in mind, and keep in mind, as Ann said, these are just 3 that we've seen. I think in time we're going to see more and more start building. We saw with Amazon Music, it's a little bit different from the other forums. It's more focused on their Instagram, but they have different requirements. You're going to have to really look into this and see what makes sense. How much time do you want to put into it? And what can you do? And as we've been saying throughout, plan ahead.
Yeah, I think it's very likely that the others will follow. This tends to what happened. It's a feature that's coming in, and we'll just see where this takes us. It's an exciting time. I'm not sure that every platform will do this, but more will do it. And it's going to be great because, as I said earlier, it's going to expose you. If you get featured on this, it's not as simple as getting a boost in listeners, being exposed to people that would already maybe find you eventually. You're going to find a whole swathe of people that may never have come across you in normal circumstances.
Not something you do for every episode, but I definitely think it's worth you guys doing for a special episode, milestone episodes, specialty months. whatever the case is. Think about it, plan ahead, make your impact.
Yeah. And also don't lose heart if it doesn't happen. It could just be that there's a sheer amount of people that have gone in at that moment, but at least you've got 3 options. You can still submit to Amazon, to Anchor, and to Apple, and you might be very lucky and get all 3. You might get one of them. Any kind of coverage like this is going to be a real game changer for you. So I wish you the best of luck with it.
All right, guys, until next time, happy podcasting. I'm Amy J.
And I'm Ant McGinley. Thanks for listening.